You always said I wasn't sharp anymore. I told my son, but it turns out I was just quiet. And I let you show me exactly who you are. That's what I told him right there in my living room, while his so-called future slipped right through his greedy fingers. But it didn't start that way. No, it began in the most ordinary moment, just me, watering my tomato plants on a hot summer morning. I never imagined that a little fainting spell would lead to my own child freezing my bank accounts and treating me like I was already gone. My name is Evelyn Brooks. I'm 74 years old, and until last year, I managed everything in my life down to the penny. I was a school teacher for 37 years, raised my only child, Michael, on a single income, paid off my mortgage before I hit 60, and kept every receipt and bank statement in perfect order. I wasn't rich, but I was steady, proud. I knew how to stretch a dollar, how to stand on my own 2 feet. I never needed help, and certainly not from my son. But that summer, something shifted. I fainted in my kitchen, and my sweet neighbor, Mrs. Hanley, saw me fall through the window. She called the ambulance. The doctors said it was dehydration, nothing serious, but Michael showed up the next morning with a stack of concern and a bouquet of silk flowers, and that's when it began. "Mom, we need to talk about your safety," he said. "What if you'd been alone longer? What if no one had found you?" At first, I thought he was just being protective, but then he brought over a banker, a slick man named Gregory Vance, and slid a folder across the table. "Just temporary," Michael said. "Power of attorney in case something ever happens again. I'll just help manage your accounts until you're back on your feet." He rubbed my back while I signed. Tricia, his wife, brought over soup and smiled too wide. "We're just looking out for you, Mama Ev." That was the last time anything felt normal. Weeks later, I stood at the grocery store, flour in one hand and yeast in the other, while my debit card got declined twice. My emergency credit card worked, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I called Michael, and he said, "Don't worry, Mom. I just moved a few things around. You don't need to handle that anymore." Those words, "you don't need to handle that anymore," hit me harder than the fall, because they didn't come from a place of love. They came from a place of power. And that was the moment I realized my son wasn't protecting me. He was replacing me. I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe Michael didn't realize what he was doing. Maybe he didn't know how it felt for me to stand at that checkout line like a stranger to my own money. But the truth was, it was no mistake. Over the following weeks, things changed fast. Michael started showing up with spreadsheets, monthly summaries of my expenses, printed in color and explained like I was one of his clients. When I asked about a missing bank statement, he brushed it off, saying everything was going digital now. It's more modern. He told me. Besides, you never really read those pages anyway. That stung. I'd spent my life reading every line of every bill. My old notebook, the one I'd used for years to track every cent, was still sitting in my kitchen drawer. I hadn't stopped using it. I just didn't show it to him. Then one afternoon, he reached across the table and took my debit card from my wallet. "Just so you don't misplace it again," he said. He meant well, I told myself. But then he set up a joint checking account for emergencies, one I couldn't even access. When I called my health insurance provider to ask about a routine question, they told me the new point of contact was Michael. Without telling me, he'd changed the name on the account. That's when I started writing everything down. Dates, names, balances, notes from conversations. I tucked my little notebook into the back of an old cookbook, one no one ever opened. It was my lifeline, my quiet resistance, and still, things got worse. Trisha, my daughter-in-law, started making comments about the house. This place is too much for you. Mama Ev, all these rooms, the stairs. Wouldn't it be easier to move somewhere cozier? Her tone was always sweet, but her eyes wandered the living room like she was measuring the drapes. Then came the final blow. Michael called it a monthly discretionary stipend. That's how he framed it. $150 a month preloaded onto a card he handed me, like I was some teenager with an allowance. This way. You don't have to worry about bills, he said. We'll take care of everything. Everything. My money, my house, my independence, even my choices. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, my name written at the top of his budget sheet, but none of the numbers felt like mine. I looked around my own home and realized something awful. I was becoming a guest in the life I had built. I wasn't losing my mind. I was losing my freedom, and I knew exactly who to call. Reggie, my nephew, my sister's boy. He used to spend summers with me as a kid, chasing fireflies in the backyard, helping me pull weeds in the tomato garden. He'd grown up into a quiet, kind man with a career in IT security and a soft spot for family. We kept in touch, holiday cards, birthday calls, but I hadn't asked for anything in years. When I dialed his number, he picked up on the third ring. Reggie, I said, voice trembling, I need your help. He didn't ask why, didn't make me explain, just said, I'll be there Thursday. And he showed up in jeans and a Panthers hoodie, hugged me tight, and sat with me at the table. I handed him my notebook, watched him flip through the pages slowly, brows knitting together with every line he read. You've been keeping track of all this? He asked. I nodded. I never stopped. They just hoped I would. He pulled a laptop from his backpack, set it on the table, and went to work. While I brewed tea, he tried logging into my bank accounts. My Social Security portal, none of my passwords worked. Michael had changed them all. Reggie dug deeper, running traces on my Social Security number and cross-checking financial activity. That's when he found it. Michael had created a shell company, Thomas and Legacy Holdings. He used it to reroute my money, move accounts under a fake business name, and funnel thousands, $88,000 to be exact, into a place where I no longer existed on paper. He's funding a business, Reggie said, turning the screen toward me, and he's doing it with your money. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just folded my hands in my lap and asked the one question that mattered. Can we get it back? Reggie looked me straight in the eye. If we keep records, and I know a good lawyer, yes. But you can't tip him off. Not yet. I nodded. I've been careful my whole life. I said, let's show him who he's really dealing with. For the next few weeks, I played the part they expected. I smiled when Trisha came by with her 2 salty casseroles. I let Michael explain the same financial summary for the 3rd time, like I hadn't taught algebra to teenagers for nearly 4 decades. I even thanked him for taking care of everything. But inside I was watching, listening, recording. Reggie helped me download a screen recording app onto an old phone he brought. We called it my burner. It stayed tucked in my apron pocket or hidden in the cabinet above the spice rack. Every time Michael let a little truth slip words like my portfolio or the equity in the house, I tapped the red button. Evidence. I smiled through it all. Not because I was weak, but because I had a plan. One afternoon, Michael sat across from me, sipping herbal tea like he ran the place. You know, Mom, he said, setting his cup down, it's honestly better this way. You don't have to stress about bills or paperwork. You get to enjoy life. I nodded, meeting his eyes. You're right, baby, I said sweetly. I'm just so lucky to have a son like you." He smiled and patted my hand. I could almost see the future he was imagining me, tucked away in some corner of a retirement home while he renovated my house and moved on with his life, like I was already gone. By the end of that week, Reggie came back. This time, he brought a thick manila folder and a look I hadn't seen on him before, fierce and focused. "This," he said, setting the folder on the table, "is everything: bank transfers, IP logs, email printouts, audio files, even a forged digital appraisal form signed with my name submitted just 2 weeks ago. He's not just draining your accounts," Reggie said. "He's trying to sell your house. There are even digital renderings from a real estate consultant showing what it'll look like after the elderly occupant is moved out." I was the elderly occupant. I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I just walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stood at the sink until my hands stopped shaking. The next morning, I called Cassandra Wynn. Cassandra wasn't just a lawyer. She was a force. Years ago, she helped me draft my first will after Harold died. I hadn't spoken to her in nearly 2 decades, but she picked up the phone like she'd been waiting. "Evelyn Brooks," she said, her voice like a blade wrapped in velvet. "I was wondering when you'd call." I met her in her office by noon. She still wore her hair in tight, natural curls, rimmed her glasses in gold, and painted her lips red like she meant it. I handed her Reggie's folder, my checkbook records, the phone with recordings, and the original will I'd kept in my hallway drawer for years. She read through every page in silence. Then she looked up at me. "We're not going to confront them," she said. "We're going to let them trap themselves." That was her plan. First, she filed for an emergency financial review and began drafting an injunction to block any sale of the house. At the same time, she rewrote my will. Everything savings, insurance. My home would be placed into a living trust under my name only. Reggie was appointed as successor trustee, and Cassandra added a clause to ensure if I were ever declared mentally unfit again, no decisions could be made without court oversight. "You still have full control," she said. "We're just locking the doors they left wide open." I nodded, feeling the heat return to my chest. "And if they try to move me?" I asked. She leaned forward. "You call me. I'll file that injunction within an hour. If they so much as try to pack your bags, I'll bury them in court." I walked out of her office with a fresh will in my purse and fire in my gut. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. The next day, Tricia sat on my porch scrolling through her phone like it belonged to her. "Hey, Mama Ev," she said without even glancing up. "Michael's thinking about listing the house soon. Market's hot." I smiled and nodded. "Is that so?" I said. "Well, we'll just have to see what the future holds." She didn't catch the edge in my voice. That evening, I tucked the new will into a clean envelope and locked it away with my birth certificate. I lit a lavender candle in the kitchen, pulled out my old recipe box, and baked a peach cobbler, Harold's favorite. Not because I missed the past, but because I was preparing for the next chapter. This time, I wasn't waiting for anyone to protect me. This time, I was protecting myself. And Michael, he had no idea the game he started was about to end on my terms. By the time the grocery stores started hanging Christmas wreaths in their windows, I had enough evidence to fill a drawer. Michael still thought he was 10 steps ahead. He used big words, breezed through conversations like I was just background noise, and smiled like he had it all figured out. But I'd taught high school math for almost 40 years. I've seen every trick in the book, every cheater who thought they were slick. Every student who thought my silence meant I wasn't paying attention. He didn't realize silence was how I listened best. Reggie came by one Saturday afternoon with a portable scanner and printer. "You need hard copies," he said. "Digital stuff can vanish if they try anything clever." We printed everything: screenshots, emails, transaction logs, recorded conversations, notarized documents. Then I saw it. An email thread between Michael and a real estate consultant, plans to relist my house. Not hypothetical plans. Actual marketing designs. Renderings with staged furniture and light flooding into the living room. A caption read, "Spacious layout ready for renovation once elderly occupant is relocated." I was the elderly occupant. In another document, there it was my signature. Signed electronically on an appraisal form submitted 2 weeks prior. Only I had never signed it. "He forged your name," Reggie said, his voice low, jaw tight. "That's criminal. Anti-Ev." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even sit down. I walked to the sink, turned on the tap, and filled a glass. My hands were steady. My heart wasn't racing. I knew what I had to do. The next day was Saturday. Michael arrived like clockwork, carrying a box of overpriced groceries I hadn't asked for. Tricia followed behind, chattering about some Etsy shop she was starting. They looked so self-satisfied, so comfortable in the lie they'd built. "We need to talk about your future." "Mom," Michael said, sitting down like a boss at a staff meeting, "you've done so much for this family, and we just want you to really relax. No more worrying about upkeep or bills." "Go on," I said, keeping my face calm. "There's this senior community just outside the city," he continued. "Silver Pines, gardens, events, nurses on staff. It's top tier. You'll love it," Tricia added. "And we already toured it. You should have seen the recreation room. They even do bingo on Wednesdays." I smiled politely. "That sounds lovely, baby." "When were you thinking?" "Early January," he said. "Just waiting on a couple offers for the house to come in. Don't worry, we'll handle the move." That night, I called Cassandra from the old flip phone she gave me. "They're moving forward," I said. "They're planning to relocate me and sell the house." Her voice was crisp as always. "Then it's time. I'll file the injunction first thing tomorrow. Let them walk right into it." The next morning, I opened my mailbox and found a holiday card from Michael and Tricia, a photo of the two of them on a yacht, Michael in sunglasses, Tricia holding a glass of something bubbly. The caption read, "Happy holidays from the future Mr. and Mrs. Thompson Estate." No mention of me. I tore the card in half and dropped it in the trash. Then I made myself a cup of coffee, opened the curtains, and looked out at my front lawn, still mine. Every blade of grass, every crack in the sidewalk, every sun-bleached slat on the old porch swing. They weren't taking a thing without a fight. That week, Cassandra and I prepared. She froze any future financial transfers, submitted the fraud complaint and the forged signature report, and officially filed the injunction to block any sale of my home. Reggie installed discreet cameras in the hallway, pointing toward the front and back doors. "If they tried to move you out by force," he said, "we'll have it on video." Then Cassandra gave me a final piece of advice. "Thanksgiving is coming. Invite them. Say nothing. Let them show their true faces in front of others." I smiled. "You sure?" She leaned forward. "Mrs. Brooks, I've never been more sure of anything." So I cleaned the house. I baked sweet potato pie and cornbread dressing. I pulled out the china I hadn't used since Harold's funeral. I even found Michael's old place card from his high school graduation and set it on the table beside the wine glass. The night before Thanksgiving, Tricia called. We'll bring dessert. Hope you don't mind we invited a few friends. They've been dying to see the house before we make changes." "Oh, not at all," I said. "The more the merrier." Then I hung up the phone, sat in my favorite chair, and let myself feel the calm before a storm I had planned down to the minute. Michael thought he had the upper hand. But tomorrow he'd find out exactly who raised him and what happens when a mother stops playing nice. Thanksgiving morning arrived quiet and gray. There was a light drizzle tapping against the kitchen window as I stirred the gravy. The smell of sage and cinnamon filled the house, real smells, not the artificial kind that came in a bottle. I'd already set the table with the good china, polished every glass, folded the linen napkins just like I used to when Harold was alive. I wore my cream-colored cardigan that morning, the one Michael once said made me look too old-fashioned. I wore it anyway, with pride. They arrived late, of course. 1:15 p.m. Michael barged in like he owned the place, holding a store-bought cheesecake I hadn't asked for, shouting about traffic as if that excused everything. Tricia followed, wearing a faux fur vest and a perfume that didn't belong anywhere near food. They brought friends, 2 couples I'd never met, the kind of folks who spoke in polite tones, but whose eyes wandered around my home like it was a property listing. "This place has great bones," Michael said, gesturing toward the living room wall. "You knock that out. Open up the kitchen, add a ton of value." He didn't even look at me when he said it. Tricia trailed her fingers along the mantel, already imagining how she'd repaint it. "We're thinking soft gray with gold accents," she whispered to one of her guests, like this house was already hers to redesign. I smiled, steady as ever. "Make yourselves comfortable. Dinner's almost ready. I brought the food out dish by dish. Turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, greens, cornbread, pie, all homemade, all mine." As everyone sat down, Michael tapped his wine glass with a fork. "Before we eat," he said, standing with his glass raised like he was addressing a boardroom, "I want to say a few words." I folded my hands in my lap. "This year's been full of growth and tough decisions," he began. "Tricia and I have stepped into new responsibilities, especially when it comes to family. As many of you know, we'll be moving Mom into Silver Pines in January." Tricia laughed lightly. "Don't worry, it's gorgeous. She'll be pampered. She deserves it." One of their guests leaned in, looking intrigued, and the house, Michael smiled wide. "We're already entertaining offers. It's time for a new chapter." That's when I stood, not loudly, not dramatically, just with calm, deliberate purpose. "Thank you, Michael," I said, my voice clear. "But I have an announcement too." His smile faltered. Just a flicker, like a magician sensing his trick was about to be exposed. "I won't be moving to Silver Pines," I said. "In fact, I've already made other arrangements." Tricia blinked. "Wait, what?" "This house," I continued, "is already sold. Closing papers were signed last week. The funds are secured in a private trust, one that you no longer have access to." Michael set his wine glass down with a small clink. "Excuse me." I nodded once. "I sold it. Legally. Everything's finalized, and right on cue." The front door opened. In walked Cassandra Wynne heels clicking against the hardwood, red folder in hand. She looked every inch the professional Michael never saw coming. "Mrs. Brooks," she said warmly, nodding at me. "Everything is filed. The injunction is active. The fraud complaint submitted, and your updated will has been notarized." Tricia jumped to her feet. "Who is this?" "I'm her attorney," Cassandra replied, "and you'll want to sit down." Michael's face turned red. "You can't do this." "You signed over power of attorney." "No, I said firmly. I signed a temporary document during a medical episode, and you exploited it. That's not help, that's theft. Cassandra laid down the evidence, the forged signature on the appraisal, the unauthorized account transfers, the shell company registered under my name, multiple felonies, she said, including elder financial abuse and identity fraud. Tricia sat slowly, her face drained of color. Michael looked at me, eyes wide with disbelief. You don't understand. I was just trying to protect you. No, I said, my voice unwavering. You were trying to control me, and now you've lost everything. Cassandra pulled out one final paper and slid it across the table. You've been removed from her estate, she said. Permanently. Michael's mouth opened, then closed again, like a fish out of water. Tricia reached for her purse. Come on, Michael, let's go. But he didn't move. He just stood there, staring at me, his world unraveling, right in the house he thought he already owned. Cassandra walked them to the door. If either of you attempts to contact her again, we'll pursue harassment charges. Good night. The door closed, and I laughed, not loud, not angry, just the kind of laugh that rises up from your chest when you've held it in for far too long. I looked around at the half-eaten plates, the untouched wine, the stunned faces of strangers. Then I picked up my fork, took a bite of sweet potato pie, and savored it. It was delicious. Cassandra poured herself a glass of wine and sat beside me. That, she said, was beautiful, poetic. I shrugged, smiling just a little. He should have known better. After everyone left, I packed the leftovers, cleaned the kitchen, and threw the fake cheesecake in the trash. Then I sat on the porch, wrapped myself in a blanket, and let the silence settle in. The air smelled like rain and roasted turkey, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The court date came quickly. Cassandra filed the paperwork the Monday after Thanksgiving, and by that Friday, I found myself seated inside a quiet, wood-paneled courtroom. I wore a simple navy blue dress, my cardigan pulled snug over my shoulders, and in my lap were 3 folders, my evidence, my truth, and my name. Michael walked in late, his suit wrinkled, eyes hollow. He looked smaller somehow. Tricia wasn't with him. Cassandra later told me she had gone back to Atlanta to clear her head. I didn't ask for more. I didn't need to. The judge was a no-nonsense black woman with cropped hair and glasses that perched low on her nose. She scanned the documents for a full 5 minutes before looking up. Cassandra stood and laid it out like a seasoned storyteller, calm, precise, devastating. She told the court how I was misled into signing a temporary power of attorney during a vulnerable moment, how Michael rerouted funds from my accounts into a fraudulent LLC, how he forged my name on legal documents and was planning to sell my home without my knowledge or consent. Michael tried to interrupt. Your Honor, he said, his voice thin and strained. My mother's memory isn't what it used to be. She's confused. She doesn't always understand. The judge held up a hand without looking at him. I've listened to the audio recordings. She said, she doesn't sound confused. You do. He sat back down. Quiet. Cassandra presented everything: Reggie's digital documentation, printed bank records, signatures, timestamps, and transcripts. Every shady move Michael had made now sat under the bright light of a courtroom. The judge shook her head slowly. I see this more often than I'd like to admit, she said, but this is one of the most calculated cases of elder financial abuse I've seen in years. Michael looked at me then, his eyes pleading. Mom, please, this isn't what it looks like. I leaned forward. My voice was steady. "It looks like you stole from me," I said. "It looks like you wanted me out of the way. And it looks like I finally did something about it." He didn't respond. What could he say? The judge issued her ruling right there in the courtroom. Effective immediately, I was restored full legal and financial control. The power of attorney Michael had used was revoked retroactively. He was ordered to repay the full $88,000 he had taken, plus interest and legal fees. The shell company he had created under my name was to be dissolved on the spot. Any future attempts to access my accounts, sell my property, or change point of contact on my policies would result in criminal charges. As the judge signed the final documents, I didn't look back. I rose from my seat with Cassandra at my side, my head held high, and walked out of that courtroom as my full self, no longer a victim, no longer afraid. It wasn't just a legal victory. It was the return of my name, my dignity, and my freedom. Cassandra dropped me off at the bank herself. The branch manager's face turned white when he saw me walk in. "Mrs. Brooks," he stammered. "We didn't know. We weren't told. You know now," I said simply. "Together." Cassandra and I spent the next 2 hours cleaning up the damage. Every document was updated, every account reviewed, every password reset. I closed the joint account Michael had opened and opened a new one under my name alone. Reggie's name was added as my emergency contact. Cassandra's was second. Michael's name was nowhere to be found. By December, my home was legally placed under a trust that protected it from any outside manipulation. My monthly retirement income was secure again. I even hired a new accountant personally vetted by Reggie and paid for a prepaid legal service, just in case. Everything Michael had touched was erased. As for him, he lost his job within 2 weeks. Word travels fast in financial circles, especially when the words are elder abuse and fraud. The firm didn't want the liability. Tricia filed for separation not long after. Cassandra said she'd only married him for the illusion of security, and once that collapsed, so did the marriage. Last I heard, Michael was living in a small duplex on the far edge of town, the same part he once called sketchy. His SUV had been repossessed. He tried to apply for financial licenses again, but the pending fraud report blocked every attempt. Now he answers phones at a credit repair company, helping others recover from the kind of damage he caused. And me, I moved into a quiet 2-bedroom condo near Reggie and his wife. No stairs, no leaky faucets, just a little backyard where I planted tomatoes again. It's not fancy, but it's mine, entirely mine. Every morning, I brew my own coffee and check my own accounts. No one tells me what's in my budget. No one keeps my passwords. No one calls me forgetful for asking questions. Reggie visits every Sunday. Sometimes we talk about the court case. Sometimes we talk about books. Sometimes we sit on the porch in silence, just listening to the wind and the birds. One afternoon, he asked me, "Auntie Ev, do you miss him?" I thought about it, about the boy I raised, the one who used to call me Mama Bear, the one who picked dandelions for me in the yard, the one who once hugged me with both arms like he was afraid to let go. "I miss who he used to be," I said, "but I don't miss who he became." Reggie nodded. He understood. That night, I sat by my window with a cup of tea and stared out at the stars. For the first time in a long, long while, I didn't feel watched, managed, or doubted. I felt free. The first Christmas after it all ended was quiet. There were no extravagant dinners, no carefully wrapped gifts with glittery bows from Tricia, no forced smiles around a table that had long ago stopped feeling warm. And yet, there was peace. Reggie and his wife, Monique, invited me over. Their little girl, Ela, called me Auntie Ev and showed me every single ornament on their modest tree, like she'd discovered treasure in each one. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And real was more than enough. A few days later, a plain white envelope appeared in my mailbox. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper in Michael's handwriting, sloppy, rushed. He didn't apologize, didn't mention the court, didn't acknowledge the theft, the lies, the betrayal. Just wrote that he'd been struggling, that Tricia had left, that he had lost everything. And then, at the bottom, a single line: I thought I was protecting you. I sat at my kitchen table with that letter in my hand for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat, thinking about the kind of protection that takes everything from someone and calls it love. Then I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer next to my old checkbooks, right where it belonged with everything else I no longer used, but couldn't quite throw away. In January, I did one last thing. There was still a storage unit in my name. Michael had been using it for years to stash business documents, leftover furniture, and old electronics he didn't want cluttering his home. He'd moved things from my house into it without permission. I sold it. The money went straight into a scholarship fund I started at the local community college. It's for first-generation students from single-parent homes. I named it after Harold, my late husband, the one man who never made me feel small. The first 4 recipients were young women, one of them working 2 jobs to pay tuition. I saw myself in her. One evening, Reggie called and said, "Auntie," the alert triggered again. "Michael tried to access an old email under your name. Just a ping. No action needed." I thanked him. I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. By February, I had a new routine. Mornings were mine. Coffee brewed just the way I like it. A newspaper in my lap. Soft music playing on the radio. I started writing in a leather-bound journal Reggie had given me for Christmas, not to recount the pain, but to remember who I was before. I wrote about the day I bought my first car, the time I saved 3 students from expulsion because I believed in them when no one else did. I wrote about Malcolm's birth, yes. I still thought of him as Malcolm sometimes. Not just Michael and how I rocked him through fevers and held his hand the first time he scraped his knee. That little boy lived in my memory, the man he became. I'd laid him to rest beside the last lie he told me. But then, one afternoon in March, there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened it, and there he stood, Michael, thinner than I remembered, his skin pale, hands fidgeting at his sides like a child about to confess. He didn't bring flowers. He didn't bring a gift. Just himself. "Mom," he said quietly, "can we talk?" I didn't move for a moment. Then I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "We're not doing this in my home," I said. He nodded. "Okay." We sat on the porch. He looked around at the wind chime Illa made me, the tomato seedlings I'd started early, the rocking chair I found at a flea market and restored with my own hands. "I lost everything," he said after a long pause. "After the court ruling, after Tricia left. I've been working part-time, answering phones, sleeping on a friend's couch." I said nothing. I deserved it. He added, "I know I did. I was scared of losing you, of not being in control. I thought if I managed everything, I could finally make up for all the years I wasn't there. But I got greedy. I know that now." I stared at the lamppost across the street. It flickered softly in the evening light. "I'm not asking for money," he said, "or forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to be better. I turned to look at him. His hands were shaking. You betrayed me, I said. You turned me into a project to manage, a liability to contain. You stole from me and called it protection. His lips parted, but no words came out. And still, I said, my voice soft now, you are my son. He looked up, eyes red, but you are no longer my legacy. He bowed his head. I stood up. As I opened the screen door to go back inside, I heard his voice barely above a whisper. I miss you. Mom. I paused, hand resting on the doorframe. I hope someday, I said, you'll grow into the man I raised, not the one you became. Then I stepped inside, and that was the last time we spoke. Now, when I walk through my little condo, every corner whispers peace. There are no echoes of tension hiding behind furniture, no passwords stolen, no mail redirected. Just me, my name, my freedom. Reggie visits every weekend with Monique and little Illa. They bring muffins. We drink coffee on the porch and talk about everything or nothing. Reggie updates me on the scholarship fund. 5 students helped this semester alone. 2 of them remind me of myself when I was young, working double shifts to put Malcolm through college. Life isn't perfect, but it's mine again. And when people ask me how I bounced back from what my son did, I tell them the truth. I didn't bounce. I stood up, and I never let anyone sit me down again. The door never opened again. Weeks passed, and I never heard from Michael after that day on the porch. Sometimes, late at night, I'd catch myself remembering the weight of his tiny hand in mine, or the way he used to run down the hallway in pajamas too big for his little legs. But I didn't let those memories trick me into forgetting the man he became. Instead, I poured my love into living, into my garden, into my journal, into the quiet peace of mornings with my own thoughts, untouched by someone else's agenda. Each Sunday, Reggie came by with his family. We'd laugh over coffee, listen to Illa chatter about school, and talk about the students we were helping through the scholarship fund. Students who, like me once upon a time, needed someone to believe in them. In the stillness of my home, I found strength, not the kind that shouts or fights, the kind that endures, that remembers, that chooses peace. I didn't rebuild my life for revenge. I rebuilt it for me, and that made all the difference. In life, the deepest betrayal often comes from the people we love most. But forgiveness doesn't mean returning to harm. It means choosing to heal on your own terms. You are never too old to reclaim your voice, your dignity, or your freedom. Let this story remind you that silence is not weakness, that stillness is not surrender, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is no more. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to take back your life after someone tried to control it? Share your experience in the comments. And if you want more real, powerful stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep these voices heard.